morning. This is Teacher Kevin. Anyway, it's a holiday for the government school now. So happy holiday for all the students and parents. But as students still need to practice, study, prepare themselves for next year. So today I'm going to talk about a PT3, Form 3 Science, Chapter 1. It's about stimuli and responses. What are stimuli and what are responses? So by looking at this interactive screen, right, let's start with the first slide. The first chapter, stimuli and responses, are about the human nervous system. There are two types of nervous system. One that involves the brain and the spinal cord. And we call it the central nervous system. You can see here, I've already put the drag and drop the correct answer. So all you need to do is just drag this with your mouse. It will be there. But here, because this is interactive, you can't see. I'll do it for you. Right. Just drag. So here, central nervous system. If it's small, you can always. So central nervous system is the one that consists of the brain and the spinal cord. So remember, central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord. The spinal cord is located inside backbone so that we can protect them. And the brain, there are so many nerve cells and sensory cells. That is a control center. They control how I talk now, how you listen now, how you watch, how you walk, things like that. So this is the first nervous system, the central nervous system. The second nervous system is called the peripheral nervous system. So this is the peripheral nervous system, and it consists of the cranial nerve and the spinal nerve. So very simple. Human nervous system consists of two systems. One is called central nervous system, which consists of the brain and the spinal cord. The second is the peripheral nervous system, consists of the cranial nerve and the spinal nerve. Afterward, we will deal with what is cranial nerve, what is spinal nerve, and what is spinal cord. And when you have finished this button below, or OK, so you just press OK. You will go to the slide 2. And on your right hand side, you can see you have 4 right, no wrong yet. And the clock is still ticking. It doesn't matter the clock. Right, about the second slide. So what is stimulus and what is response? Stimulus, stimuli, what's the difference? Stimulus is a singular. Stimuli is plural. So if there's only one stimulus, there are many stimuli. Now science is like that. So example, stimulus, like here, you can see this picture. This hot pan, very hot. So stimuli actually is something, the change in the environment. Okay? The change in the environment, and then we can detect it. So these are called stimulus. Example of stimulus are like light, change in the light, daytime, nighttime, hotness, coldness, very hot, very cold, change in the temperature, right? So these are an example. So here, the stimulus is a hot pan, so hot. You don't know about it, so you just go and touch it. So your body will respond. So what are the response? You will quickly pull the hand away. So this we call response. So our human body, the nervous system, can detect this stimulus, and then we can interpret either by our brain or by the spinal cord. And then quickly we are going to do a response. What are we going to do? Keep on holding the pen, or we just withdraw. We get injured. Right? Next slide. So, like I said just now, what is a stimulus? It's singular. A lot of stimulus or stimuli. Stimuli. The first one, see, you can smell something nice. You smell good fruits, good food. Alright. So all because of the chemicals in the air. So these chemicals in the air are the stimuli. And then, of course, in Malaysia there's no snow. But if you feel cold in some country, or at night quite cold, because there's a change in the temperature. So this change in the temperature is a stimuli. Because it's so cold, we may have to wear more shirts, more clothing. And then we cut something, but accidentally we cut our hands. It's so painful. So pain is also a stimuli. Okay? Next, under the hot sun, so hot. So the heat from the sun has come over to our body, the skin, so we can feel it. So heat is also a kind of stimuli. And then we can hear music. We like to hear, like you're now hearing what I say. So there's a change in the environment again. So of course there are many more stimuli. So you can observe it. And then you can give example of it. Okay, let's proceed to the next slide. Then there are some terms you need to know. There are many cells in our body. So one of them, you've got skin cells, you've got bone cells, you've got brain cells, you've got hair also. One type of cell, we call it the sensory cell. These sensory cells are specialized cells because they can transmit messages. That, like just now, the stimuli, very hot, very cold. These are just the messages. So they have to be interpreted by our brain, by our spinal cord, so that we know there's a change. We are comfortable with this condition, but now we have changed. So we need to respond. So these messages has to be transmitted and it's detected. So it is detected by our sensory cell and then sent to our brain or spinal cord by using a term called nerve impulses. So these nerve impulses are actually electrical signals. So our body are full of ions, electric signals, like current. They're flowing around. But of course, it won't kill you. Right. So this sensory cell is also called neuron. So you can call it sensory neuron, sensory cell. Later you will know that there are a few types of sensory cell, like the receptor and the effector. Right. Then the messages that they send are electrical messages. So we call it impulse. You don't have to keep it electrical messages or electrical signal, you just say impulse. So impulse, you know, the nerve impulse are the electrical signals that are messages that go through our whole. Next. Now, we know what is impulse, what is sensory cells, right? And what is stimulus. So what do we do? Like for example, when our eyes see a glass of water, this is a glass of water. So this glass of water, well, it won't enter our eye, but the lights will enter into our eyes, right? That's why we can see so many things. So this light that enter our eye is a kind of stimulus. So our eye have to detect this stimulus. So our eyes detects the stimulus. So when our eye detects the stimulus, the sensory cell will start to send all these messages of the water in the glass as an impulse to our brain. So they have to send impulse to our brain. When our brain is a control center, it will interpret all these impulses. What are they? Oh, it's a glass of water. So what do we do? So we start to give order. Give order by means of impulse to our muscles and glands, so that our head, the muscle in our head, can do work and pick up the glass of water because you are thirsty. You want to drink. So we call this response. So it will produce a response. So in short, your eyes, or maybe your skin, and many other parts can detect the stimulus. There's a change there. At first, there's no water. Now the water. So I want to drink. Detected, they will send an impulse through the nerve cells or sensory cells. And then our brain, the center that controls all this, will have to interpret what it is and make appropriate decision and send by impulse, because they will relay impulse back to the muscles or the glands, so that we can act on it because of the response. So you can try this. There are two actions because of the response. So the response can have two actions. But one of it is we can control. We control it through our brain. We can control whether to drink or not to drink, right? So we call this a voluntary action. A voluntary action is the action controlled by the brain. See, that's why our brain can control. We want to drink, we want to run, we want to sing, we want to talk, or we don't want. We call this voluntary action. So this is the first action. The second action is voluntary action. It is an involuntary action. Involuntary action means you cannot control it. It's not voluntary. It means, and it happens automatically. You can't stop it. Your brain cannot control it at that moment. Right? We didn't say at that moment. So this is automatically one. And it cannot be controlled by a person. This involuntary action is also called a reflex action. So involuntary action, reflex action is an involuntary action. You cannot control it. It just happens automatically, like blinking the eyes. Can you control it? You cannot control. But you try to control, your eye will blink because we want to make our eyes wet. We want to dry. Or the heart, our heart is also an involuntary action. because we cannot control the heart muscle. It will keep on pumping our heart. We cannot ask the heart to stop pumping. Okay, so this is about two actions. So remember, a voluntary action and an involuntary action. All right. Next slide is about some examples of reflex action. We have discussed just now. This is an involuntary action. So, like what? Like knees jerk. Right? Like knees jerk. When somebody, you cross your leg, when somebody give you a blow, or somebody step on your leg, right? Your knees will jerk. You cannot control it, you just jerk. You just move like this picture. The knee jerk is a reflex action. It's not that the patient purposely want to kick the doctor or medical personnel. It's just he cannot control it. Now, another example of reflex action is a sudden withdrawal of hand or leg when pricked by a pin, or you accidentally step on something that's very sharp. Your leg will just withdraw, right? You will just withdraw because you cannot control it, you don't know. Or you put your fingers, candle, fire, something very hot, you just pull your hand. That is a reflex action. Right? So something, that is why when somebody want to poke your finger, you don't want to see. You're scared, it's very painful. Because this is the involuntary action. Now next, another example is, like I said just now, when the light act as a stimulus. Because everything we see is because of light. We see color is because of the light. Yeah, 7 colors. Then at night, when dark, you cannot see it because there's no light. The sun, you cannot see the sun, no light. Right. Then some of you go to the cinema, the show has started, you are late, you're just walking, then you see, oh, so dark inside because the change. Because outside the pupil is very small, it contracts. Some places, some room that is dark, then your eyes of the pupil will dilate so that more lights will enter. And after that, you can see blurring. So this is another example of involuntary action. You cannot control it. See, when it's a bright light, your pupil contracts. So small, little light go in. But if it is somewhere which is very dark, dim light, then your pupil will dilate. Go in, and then you can see clearly. You can't control this iris to make the pupil dilate or contract. It do it automatically. So we call this a reflex action. So another involuntary action is coughing. You cannot. You try to control it, you can't. You will still cough. Or sneezing. Right? Because of some irritants, something annoying has entered into your nose, the nasal passages, the nose. The irritant, something in the air, dust, right? Or insects, or spores, right? That irritate your nose. Then you start to sneeze out. You cannot control the sneezing. Right? All these are called involuntary action. sneezing. Even baby will sneeze. Right. The next term you need to know is about the kind of cells, specialized cells called receptors. It is also called effectors. Effectors and receptors, they are the same. So what are these? These receptors are the first cell, the first tissues, first cells. Right? They can detect a change in the environment. That means it's the cell that first detects the stimulus, like your finger. Right? If you accidentally touch the fire, no, some boy with some baby, they don't do it at first, they will touch it first, and then they will have experience. When they touch it, this stimulus is the heat, pass through the receptor cell in the finger. So you will receive it, right? So this is called receptor. The first cell is called receptor. Now, then this receptor will pass the stimulus as an impulse to our body. It either go to the brain or it go to the spinal cord, right? The peripheral nervous system or the central nervous system. Then when we get the message, especially the spinal cord, then they will tell the muscles or the glands, which we term them as effectors, to pull away from the danger, right? So that is called effectors. So you know about effectors, which is a receptor. The specialized cells, effector, the receptor is the first cell that detects stimulus. And then the effectors, they ask the muscles, what is the next step? So this can be represented by this impulse pathway. Let's look at the voluntary action first. When the stimulus are first detected, okay, it will be detected by our receptor, or we can call it a factor. Then this receptor will send these messages as an impulse to the brain. So receptor send impulses to the brain. The brain receives the impulse and then we start to interpret what they are and what are the next step going to do. And we send back the impulses, the messages, back to the muscles or the glands called the effector. Then this effector will respond by making an appropriate action. We call this voluntary action. So let's try. If later at the end of the show, you can click the link and then you can try it on your own. So just pull the stimulus. Stimulus can be light, it can be fire, it can be anything. Then our messages will and then the receptor will send the impulses to our brain. Then the brain will make a decision after interpreting the messages, and it will send impulses to the effectors, the muscles, the glands, and they will respond appropriately. This is a voluntary action. Now let's look at the involuntary action, which is automatically, you cannot control it. The brain cannot control it. So the pathways are almost involuntary action. First, you detect the stimulus by the receptor. But this time, they won't send to the brain. The impulses will have to be sent to the spinal cord because it's faster. And automatically, this spinal cord very quickly is sent out another to the muscle and pull themselves out from the danger and response. Okay, so I just it's done automatically. All right, you can practice on it. So and by the receptor, and then the receptor will send an impulse to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord quickly sends back another impulse to the effectors, and with appropriate response. So that's it, the involuntary action. Now, so we just do a little bit of flashback. Right. So the first one up here, this is the brain. What is the function of the brain? The function of the brain acts like a control center. It's a control center to receive impulses for all the activities, to talk, to run, to eat, to sleep, things like this. And this is the spinal cord is this great long line, spinal cord. And what is its function? This one, you don't have to control your reflex action. Right. Now, this is the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system consists of all these nerves, all these small nerves that cover our whole body. These are the spinal nerve. We call it the spinal nerve. So this spinal nerve, what is its function? Its function is to transmit all the impulses from the spinal cord to other parts of the body, and it's fast. You don't have to travel so far. See, fast. Do it automatically. So this peripheral nervous system. And this is the brain. Just now it's the spinal cord. This is the brain. The brain also are connected by a lot of nerves to all parts of our body, eyes and all this, all parts of the body. So we call it the cranial nerve. Cranial means about the brain. So the cranial nerves. The function is to transmit impulses to the other parts of the body from the brain. So from the brain, send out impulses through what? Through the cranial nerves. Okay, that's all about the first part, 01, first part of the Form 3, PT3 signs, stimuli, and responses. If you find it good, you can go down the link below and like the page. Thank you.